Hello friends, this is Odds here in the flesh, and today I'm doing something that I wish I could do more often, which is to roast Scott John. He recently made a video called Why Iron Will is the best non-exhaustion perk for Survivor. And basically the 2 points of this video, if you've already watched it, I'll summarize it. If you don't plan on watching it, I'll bring you up to speed, is that the best perks are the exhaustion perks for survivors. They make distance, they buy you time, and that time can be used by your teammates very efficiently. But if you don't count those perks, Iron Will is actually the best perk. And I disagree with both of these things. Now, jokes aside, Scott makes very good points. Iron Will is an incredibly useful, versatile, and generally great perk to run. If you don't have it, anytime you're injured, you make a lot of noise. Anywhere near you, the killer, if the killer's anywhere near you, they will hear you. Even if you crouch, which makes you a bit quieter, or go into a locker, which makes you somewhat quieter, they can still hear you if they're close enough. And that's bad for stealth. And it also has a lot of implications during a chase. If a killer loses sight of you because you go around the wall, they can still hear you. So they will know if you're hugging the wall, or if you're running away, because they'll hear you get quieter and quieter and quieter. Now, Iron Will makes you have no breathing or running or panting sounds whatsoever when you're injured. So if they don't see you, they have to guess, and this means that they cannot really afford to lose sight of you and try to do any fancy mind games, because if they don't realize it, you might go away very, very quickly and lose them, and by the time they realize, they'll have lost massive distance. Against the average killer, Iron Will is very good. Against some killers that track by sound a lot, and this includes Nurse, Spirit especially, Iron Will is an absolute constant. And with some of the patches that are happening soon, it actually will have even less counterplay from the killers. So that should make Iron Will just the absolute best perk in the world. No, it doesn't. The thing about Iron Will that you have to realize is that Iron Will is an on or off perk. You chase a survivor for a little bit after you injure them, and you can figure out whether they have Iron Will or they do not. If they don't have Iron Will, that's it. You don't have to worry about it. If they do have Iron Will, you won't be able to play and chase it the exact same way. You'll have to be extra mindful, but that's about it. It doesn't really have a lot more implications for the rest of the game. For that reason, I put this perk roughly around the 6th spot in the strongest survivor perks. Still amazing, considering that there's like 90 survivor perks. So it's still a really good one, but it's not the best. Now, I do agree with Scott that some of the exhaustion perks are better than Iron Will. Personally, right now, I am placing Dead Heart and Sprint Burst in the number 4 and number 5 spots. And I used to think that Sprint Burst was superior to Dead Heart, and I still think it is. Objectively, I think Sprint Burst, when used correctly, is a really strong perk. You can avoid any dead zone. Go watch my video where I break down every perk if you want to know my full thoughts of it. It's a really powerful perk. But Dead Heart is just about as good and has a factor to it that I think is really important. Now, Dead Heart will let you correct for a mistake, will let you go for an extra loop. It also has iframes to it, which is really annoying to deal with as a killer. If you're playing Trapper, a survivor can Dead Heart through your traps. If you're playing Doctor, they can Dead Heart through your shock and not get madness. They can also Dead Heart through your blast and not get madness and scream. There are so many things that Dead Heart can avoid: Hunter's Hatchets, Deathslinger shots, etc. It makes it really strong. But the thing about Dead Heart, and this is what makes the next top 3 perks also incredibly good, is that it works even when it's not there. I guarantee you, every time you chase a survivor that is injured, and you have a lot of hours in this game, you're not going to hit them right away. If you haven't seen them use an exhaustion perk already, you're always going to wait to see if they Dead Heart. So the fact that this perk exists means that almost every killer out there will waste 1 extra second or 1 extra half second every time they deal with an injured survivor. And this can sometimes be even more. I have sometimes assumed that survivors would use Dead Heart and a loop, and then they didn't use it. And then I wasted my time trying to be fancy and do a mind game, because if they did use it, I needed to do that. So it is a perk that will make you doubt yourself even when it's not there. Because if this perk was patched out tomorrow, let's say that it just completely becomes disabled, and no one can use it, then anytime you had an injured survivor, you would hit them without hesitation. Right now, anytime you have an injured survivor, you need to consider that if you hit them, they could dead hard, and while you recover, they could make it to a window, they could make it to a pallet, they could make it to a certain spot where they're suddenly safe. So this perk has a deterrence factor to it. It makes killers hesitate. And this is what the next 3 perks also do, and what I think makes them so strong. Even more so than Dead Hard. In number 3, Unbreakable. In number 2, Decisive Strike. In number 1, Borrowed Time. These perks are even better than anything else because they condition the way the killers play even when they're not used. There is always the possibility of someone in your lobbies having Unbreakable and you will not know about it. There's no way to really know beforehand. There is also the possibility that there will be a Decisive, and there is also the possibility that there will be typically multiple Borrowed Times, and these perks are so great at what they do. Now, as a killer, it is actually a very efficient thing for you to do, especially near the end of the game, to start slugging survivors, which is to leave them on the ground and try to keep them all on the ground and maybe perhaps try to finish the game right there. So let's say there's 3 survivors left and the last gen is about to be done. You down one, you down another, and now you try to go for the third, and that way you don't have to waste time hooking, and since it's just all those 3 survivors, you win easily. Now, the fact that this perk exists, Unbreakable, completely changes that. If you leave a survivor on the ground for a little bit longer than usual, they will not need 30 plus seconds to recover and then get picked up. They can actually pick themselves up in a little over 20 seconds. So that means you can never leave people on the ground for too long. With this perk and with the addition of We're Gonna Live Forever, which is a really, really fast pickup perk when people are down, slugging is actually really, really risky. It could totally backfire to leave multiple survivors on the ground if even a single one of them has this perk. So this already forces killers to be mindful and to maybe not use one of the best strategies they have for the mid to end game, which is really, really powerful. If Unbreakable was taken out of the game, suddenly the way that killers deal with many situations would change completely if you didn't have to worry about this perk. But even more impactful than Unbreakable, perhaps, is Decisive Strike and Borrowed Time. Now, these 2 perks are both focused on doing basically the same thing, which is to protect the person that just got unhooked. And this is really, really powerful. Killing a survivor off early is still, to this day, the most effective tactic available for killers by a long mile. If you kill a survivor off very early into the match, that's typically a death sentence for everyone else because their efficiency and your ability to apply pressure to them just completely switch, and it's just way too powerful. These are the 2 perks that prevent you from doing that effectively. If you did not have Borrowed Time or Decisive Strike, you would never really have to worry about anything. Anytime someone was unhooked, if they were vulnerable, and they typically are because they are just freshly unhooked and injured, you would just, without a question, go for that person, down them, then hook them again, and if it's already their second hook, they would be dead. Now, the Decisive Strike is not as powerful as it used to be. It doesn't allow you to be unhooked and do gens, but it's still very, very powerful. You can open exit gates, you can find the hatch, you can get your jigsaw reverse bear trap off, you can do so many things and still be somewhat useful, cover a lot of distance with Decisive on, and it lasts for 60 seconds. The fact that this perk exists already makes the average killer a little bit less likely to tunnel a survivor off. That incentive to kill them now is just a little bit less appealing because of the possibility that they could have this perk. If you took this perk out and a survivor was down after a hook, a killer would not hesitate at all. So the fact that this perk, by virtue of existing, makes killers hesitate and change their playstyle to a less optimal one is a really, really good thing for survivors. Again, the craziest part about this is that because there's an obsession in every match now, nobody needs to run Decisive. You could run all the perks you want, and this perk, just the fact that it exists, already does its thing. And Borrowed Time, in my opinion, is perhaps even stronger than Decisive right now. Now, Borrowed Time activates every single time a survivor is unhooked, no matter what. There's no conditions, and it lasts for up to 12 seconds on tier 3. And this is insane. Now, there are killers out there that don't even care about Decisive Strike. If a nurse catches you and downs you and you Decisive Strike her, if she's got a good add-on, she's gonna catch you 5 seconds later. Sometimes. Because the sheer mobility they have. However, borrow time will still buy you a lot of time. During those 12 seconds, a survivor that runs at 4 meters per second can make a lot of distance, can basically make it to an exit gate if they're anywhere near. If the killer hits you during this time, not only will they not really get anything, they will actually give you a speed boost. Yes, you will have to mend, but it doesn't really matter. If the killer leaves you, you can mend in peace, it's totally worth it. If the killer stays on you, you can keep running, you won't have to mend. So the mending part is really not that big of a deal for you as a team. And if the killer does hit you, that will give you so much distance that it's typically really, really bad for them. They're really hurting their chances to realistically catch you. It's always a possibility that they could try to outweight the 12 seconds, but again, with 12 seconds against most killers, you can make a lot of distance and find safety no matter where you're hooked. So if borrowed time didn't exist, I guarantee you the #1 strategy in this game would be to hit the person off the hook immediately, because they would have literally no protection and they would be just most vulnerable. And then you would take a gamble. You down the, let's say, Claudette that just got unhooked, and you pick her up. And if she doesn't have Decisive, well, she's dead. And if she does have Decisive, well, you got it out of the way. Doesn't matter. You took your chances, and you spent very little time anyway doing it, so it was worth the risk. So this is one perk that literally, by virtue of existing, makes killers play way more fair, and typically killers try to target the rescuer and not the rescued survivor, even when this perk is not there. In fact, I'm sure that you'll find lots of clips out there of a survivor running into the killer with borrowed time, and the killers sometimes don't even hit them. They don't even hit them because they know that they have borrowed time and they don't want to waste time. They want to go get whoever rescued them. So the fact that this perk and Decisive, and to a degree Unbreakable, condition the game so much without actually even being there sometimes, I think is crazy. If you remove Iron Whale, the killers are going to be completely fine. The survivors are going to be completely fine. They'll play differently, but they would be completely fine. You got to realize there's a lot of killers out there that don't care about Iron Whale. A plague that infects you doesn't care about Iron Whale, you're still coughing. A hag that just sets traps doesn't really care about Iron Whale, she just slaps you when you step on some of them. It's not a completely game-changing perk if it was removed tomorrow. If exhaustion perks were removed individually, you could always go to another exhaustion perk. And in fact, if all exhaustion perks were removed, you could probably still just run more info perks or be a bit more careful and still be fine. But you remove one of these top 3 perks, and I think the game changes so dramatically that I'm not even sure they should be removed. Or I'm not even sure if they should, or if these should be perks and not base mechanics. So yeah, let me know what you think. If you think this logic of assuming that these perks might be there is a good one. Because I think that this quality of making a perk so good that you have to worry about it, even if you don't know if it's there, I think is really what makes the true meta perks. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, where we hopefully will also make fun of Scott.